Hello. Should probably zoom back out to the webcam. Oh look, got weird hair sticking out. All the fun things you find when you're making a video, right? So this is AutoCAD modeling learning assignment number 3. In the previous 2 modeling learning assignments, we learned how to do some basic drawings, come up with lines and layers, and in this video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing some object modification. So this is again kind of in the same principle as what you can do to make edits to existing lines, how to draw things the way you want them to be, those sorts of things. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and jump right into AutoCAD. So this is my AutoCAD background. I'm starting on a fresh one. I do that for every one of these modeling learning assignments because I feel like that's easiest. What we're going to start out by doing is we're going to draw a circle. We're going to draw a square. And then we're going to draw a rectangle, and it's going to go around these two. Okay. Now again, the sizes of these don't matter. Not for this video. When we do our next video, we're going to be covering dimensions. In that one, I'm going to be showing you how to draw things a little bit more to scale. So what we're going to be focusing on today is this section up here of the Home tab, which is the Modify tab. We're going to be covering a bunch of these different features, just kind of going through what they all do, how to use them, and kind of how to explain them. The first thing I'm going to show you is the fillet, or fillet. I think it's called fillet. I've called it both, but it's typically I call it fillet function. What a fillet is it rounds and fillets the edges of objects. In the example, an arc is created that the tangent is tangent to both of these selected lines. Well, I mean, you can hover over it and it'll actually tell you. It's kind of nice. It's a nice feature AutoCAD has. If you wonder what it is, it's one of the things I really like about AutoCAD. Now, when you click on fillet, the first thing you're going to have is if you look down on your command line, you will say select first object or undo polyline radius trim multiple. So I'm just gonna jump in here and do a fillet. Okay, that did not work. Why didn't that work? Well, I'll click back on fillet again, and I'm gonna go to radius. So here I'm gonna type R in the command line because that's the short button for radius. Otherwise, you could click on radius. That works too. But I'm gonna type R and hit enter. If you look at it, the fillet radius is 0. And that's the default value. Don't ask me why AutoCAD decided to do that. They just did. So you actually have to jump in here and specify a fillet radius. Now, I know this line here was like 9 or 10 units long, so I'm just going to make my fillet length be 1. You may want it to be a little different. It's a fillet radius. You're going to want it to show up. Then I'll select these 2 lines, and you'll notice it creates that nice little curve. Now, because this is a rectangle, you'll notice that if I select this, it's all one. It's called a polyline. It's all one line that's continuous. If you want to go back into the last video here, I clicked on the line and hit explode, typed explode, and that was one of the modifiers you have if you want to break up a polyline like this. So there's one thing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do a different fillet radius. So here, if I go down here and click radius or type R and hit enter, I'm going to change this now to be 3. And then I will select these 2 lines here. So now you have one fillet and then you have another fillet down here, and there's different sizes. Okay, so that is the fillet command. Next thing I'm going to do is the chamfer. Chamfer is a little bit like a fillet. Here it puts a circle between these two. What a chamfer does is it puts a straight line between them. So here you have a number of different options down here at the bottom again. One of which is, do you want to form a polyline out of it? Here we've already got a polyline. You can set the distance, you can set the angle. I'm going to go with distance on this one. And I'm going to set first chamfer distances, whichever one you pick on first. How long do you want that to be? So I'm going to go ahead and set that at 1 and enter. Second chamfer distance, if I do want a 45-degree angle, it'll be a 1. If I don't want a 45-degree angle, I can actually pick a different value, like here, 2. So here I'll pick one line and pick another line. So here, that's 1 unit long. This is 2 units long. And it creates just a line to cut the corner down. I'm going to go ahead and do another chamfer on this one, and here I'm going to do an angle instead, and I want okay, so first chamfer length on the first line, we'll make it be 1. Chamfer angle, we'll make it be 45. So now if I pick these two, it creates it cuts off 1 inch along this line and chamfers at a 45-degree angle. Okay, so we've done some fillets, we've done some chamfers on this big rectangle. Now let's see what other kinds of things that we can do. So here, there are a bunch of other features. There's a move feature. This is something that I use a lot. Anytime you have an object that needs to be moved into position, you're going to use your move feature. So what I'm going to do here is I want to center these two objects so that they're in line with each other. Okay. So what I'll do here is I'll click this, I'll hit move, and I'm actually going to move this out of the way. Based on your OSNAP settings, you're going to want to make sure for this example, you're going to want to make sure that your center is picked, and you're also going to want to make sure your midpoint is picked. So I will go ahead and pick this, and I will just move it out of the way for now. In fact, you know what? Let's go ahead and center these two objects inside of this rectangle. So hit the move function, clicked on the circle, hit enter. It's going to ask me where I want to go to. I'll click the center of the circle and move it out. Okay, so now I've got this. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some construction lines. So here, escape. Whenever you go to draw construction lines, it's usually a good idea to have a layer set up specifically for construction lines. Okay, I usually will just cheap out and call it my layout layer, but not a bad idea to have a layer specifically for construction lines. I'm going to make these bright orange because, you know, construction. And then I'm going to make sure that they don't print. So they'll show up, but they won't print. Okay, now that I've got that, we'll switch to my construction layer. And then I'm going to create 2 lines. One line will go from the midpoint here, which has changed. Should have done this before. That's a bad idea. Dang. I'm going to draw from this one straight down to that line so that the midpoint of this line is at the center point here. And then I'm going to draw this line all the way across like that. You'll notice that I couldn't actually draw to the midpoint here because the midpoint for this line is up here. The actual midpoint of my rectangle is down here. So the way that I did it was the midpoint of this line, which goes from top to bottom, that is the center. I know that's the center. Now if I just trace this line over, so I drew a line from the midpoint over, wherever it intersects this side, now the center line of this line is actually going to be the midpoint entirely. So if I delete this line and this little line that I have here, so I'm going to click and drag down to the right, delete this line. Whatever the midpoint is of this line is the actual center of this object. Okay, so that's good to know. Now I want both my circle and my square to be located on the center of this object. I'm going to go ahead and draw, just for reference. Oh, it looks like the center line there was right. Huh, interesting. You can never always trust these though, especially when you've already done chamfers and fillets. So I want the circle and the square to be centered on this. So I'm going to use, I keep hitting L. I need to actually be showing you what I'm doing. Let's go ahead and click on a line. And I'm going to draw a line here to here. I'm going to hit enter. Now, one of the nice things about AutoCAD is if I hit enter again, after having just completed a command, it wants to redo the command. So just hitting enter again, it gets me into line. Okay, and then I'll just draw this. Now, the nice thing about this is in a rectangle, the intersection of the two bisectors, diagonal bisectors, that is the center point of my square. So I want to take this center point and I want to move it onto this line. Okay, and so what I'll do is I'll say, all right, I'm going to draw a line from here over here, enter. The center point of that line, which is about right here, is going to be where I want to center my circle. And I'll draw another line from here to here, enter. Center point of that line is going to be where I want to draw my square. So I'll go ahead and take this circle, click on it. I'll hit the move function, or you can type in M. That's the shortcut. And I'm going to move it to the center line of this line. So, ta-da! I can delete that construction line. I guess I don't have to because it doesn't show up, but I'll go ahead and hit Control Z and make that pop back up. Otherwise, you can type U, enter, and that will undo it. So here, if I hit Control Y, I can type U, enter, and it will undo its command undo in AutoCAD. So now I'll select these objects here. Notice how I'm clicking, dragging down to the left. It gets a green box. That makes it a little bit easier to select. I'll go ahead and go move this, and I will put this back on the center line right there and hit escape. Oh, that's not escape. Missed the escape button. Okay, so now I got my circle and my square both nicely positioned such that it's roughly in the two quadrants. Okay, now we're going to be doing a couple of other features. Okay, one of which is we're going to be doing an offset feature. So this is the offset feature. Offset, it just takes whatever line you have and moves it out. In a simple line, so here if I go in here and I just draw a single line, so I'm going to draw a single line, trace a path up from here, it's called an extension, draw it over, like that, enter. I'm going to go ahead and click on this, change it to be in the 0 layer. No. Yeah, and I'll show you how we can trim this down in a second, because I want it to be in line with this. But I can take this line and I can offset it. So I click on the offset button, gives me some options here. First thing it's going to ask is, what's the offset distance? Well, I'll make this 1, because that's what I've been doing for pretty much everything. If you click on this, then it'll give you the option of moving it down 1 or up 1. So that's nice. I'll go ahead and put 1 up there. Okay, and you can keep doing that. Pan upward by selecting the center mouse wheel button and pushing it down. Now I've got 3 lines up top that I have to work with. Okay, so that's how offset works with regular lines. But offset also works with polylines. So as I said, this is a polyline because all of the lines are still connected. If I grab on this and click outward, you'll notice that all of the polylines actually all scale together. So here I've got all of them connected together. If these are all individual lines, so say I'm going to go U and escape, U, enter. Okay, so here I'll go back and do my offset. Oh, no, escape. Don't do this part. I'm just showing you this for purpose. I'm going to go ahead and explode this polyline, hit enter. Now each one of these are individual line segments, circle segments, line segments. Okay, now if I go to do offset on this object, specify object distance, offset distance of 1. Now it only will offset 1 line, and in fact I have to go do a bunch of work because this one doesn't even offset. It can't. So sometimes it's really helpful to have things be a polyline. So how do you make things into a polyline? Well, I hit escape, delete these. Let's say you have a series of lines like this and you want them to be a polyline. Now we already had this as a polyline, but what if we want to make it into a new polyline? The way that you do it is it's the command it's p-edit. You hit enter and it'll say select a polyline. Well, this isn't a polyline, it's just a line. You select one of the lines here and it'll say, hey, do you want to turn it into one? Yes, I want to turn it into a polyline. Okay, and then the next one is you want to do join. So here I'm going to pick this one, and then I'm going to pick every one of these lines, which you can just select it like this, and then hit enter. And what it'll do is it will then say 8 total, 1 duplicate, 7 segments added to polyline. Okay, hit enter, and now this is a polyline again. So kind of a unique feature, polyline edit. Explode and p-edit are kind of 2 opposite functions that can be used to create a polyline. What I want you to do from this is I do want you to go into your offset function with an offset distance of 1. I'll hit enter because that's the default at this point. I'm going to make 3 lines here, and then I'm going to create 3 lines up here, and then enter. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and move these. Just kind of drag them into a place, something like that. Okay, well, I just have 3 random line lengths. Let's say I want them to be the same line distance as this inside. You'll notice that when this offset, it actually got rid of the circle and made this into a polyline. That's kind of interesting. AutoCAD has some really unique features. Let's say I want it to line up with this. What I'll do is I'm going to go back into my construction layer, which I'm already on, and I'm going to go into my line, draw a new line. I'm going to draw a line up from here, and I'm just going to have it go up above this line like that. I'll hit enter. I'll hit enter again to create another line. I'll go down here to this corner, and I'll drag it straight up at a 90-degree angle, click somewhere above, and hit enter. I want to crop these lines so that they're in line with this one right here. How do we do it? Well, it's called the trim function. So here, this is trim. You'll notice that there's an extend function that goes along with it. It's basically the opposite of a trim. AutoCAD, traditionally AutoCAD, you had to select what is my cutting edge, and then what edges are going to be cut. Here you can still do that, but today's trim function is very simple. If you click and drag, it will trim. So here, click and drag, creates this nice little line, and it trims. You can hit undo if you screwed something up and accidentally say, oops, I just erased that line. I did not mean to erase that line. You enter, it'll fix that for you. But now that you've got these trimmed to that length, hit enter, and now everything is the same length there. It's a nice way of getting 2 lines to kind of go in line with each other. Similarly, let's say I have a line and I'm trying to draw it at a 30-degree angle, but I don't know how long it's going to be, and I don't really know where the center point is, where these 2 lines are going to meet. I need to switch this out of construction. Let me do that real quick. 0. So I will draw a line here. I want it to be at a 30-degree angle. I'm just going to draw it way longer than it needs to be. So here it'll be 20 units long, and then I will hit shift, and then what is the less than sign, which is on my comma, shift comma, to switch to an angle, and I want it to be at 30 degrees. So I hit 20, less than sign, 30, that's how you signify an angle, and hit enter. Okay, now this will draw a 20-unit long line that's at 30 degrees. So go ahead and hit enter. Well, I want to draw another one, enter. From this side here, I also want it to be 20 units long. I will go ahead and hit shift, comma, to specify an angle. And then over here, if I try to go at this angle, it says there's no 30. 30 is over here. Well, I don't want it to be at 30 degrees. I want it to be at 180 minus 30 degrees. It's using your trig functions there. So I want it to be at 150 degrees. Enter. And then hit enter. Well, now these 2 are too long. So what I'll do is I just go in and I trim. Click on the trim function, cut this, enter. Or conversely, you could type trim and hit enter. That's usually what I do. All right, so there we have it. That's some of our features. Now we're going to do a couple of other fun and unique things. One of which is we're going to be doing this stretch. Now, the stretch command is kind of useless if you ask me. So here I clicked on the stretch command, I clicked on the square, hit enter. Now it'll ask me specify a base point, pick this. It didn't really do anything. Okay, so I'll hit U, enter. It just didn't even do anything. Here the stretch command is intended to work a lot like you can just click on the object and actually stretch the line directly. I wouldn't actually use the stretch command. There are some applications where you can use this for polygons. I just don't use it. That's kind of the basic function, is to skew it off of center. So show me that you know how to do this by stretching one of your corners or your rectangle. Okay, other important features are here. This is the copy object. So copy is pretty common. You're going to be using copy a lot anytime you have something that is the right size and the right look. You want to keep it. It'll ask you for a point at which you're going to define your 0 point. So here, let's copy based on center point of the circle. I've already got this square selected. I do not want to copy this square, so I'm going to hit escape a bunch. Go back in and hit copy one more time. It'll have me select objects. I'm going to pick this circle, hit enter. I want to go about the center of the circle, and now every time I put this down, I'm putting it down at the center of the circle. So I'll hit escape. You've also got a mirror function. So here we've got a weirdly shaped rectangle. First thing it's going to ask for is to select the object. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this weird rectangle. Hit enter. It'll specify first point of mirror line. I'm going to pick this top point and this bottom point. Hit enter. And then it'll say, well, pick the top point and the bottom line. And the next thing it asks is, do you want to erase the source objects? If I hit yes, or type Y, or click on yes, it will delete my original square. If I hit no, or click no, or hit enter, because that's a default option, it will keep that original object there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter to keep it, and it kind of extends outside of the area there. I'm not too picky about that. That's the mirror function. Mirror function is very useful anytime you want to create multiple objects. This up here is the explode option. I've already shown you how to type that. I didn't realize it had its own button. This is the erase object button. So here I can go in and I can erase some lines just by clicking on them. Otherwise, you can click on those lines. If I just click on this and then hit the delete button, that does the erase as well. It's kind of what I'm more familiar with. I'm a keyboard AutoCADer. Okay. This is the scale function. This enlarges or scales objects. Once again, when it comes to polylines, it actually will enlarge and scale the entire polyline at once. So if you have a complex geometry like this that you want it to be all scaled all at once, you're going to want to make sure that it is a polyline using the p-edit function, as I showed you earlier in this video. But let's say we're just going to take this circle and we're going to scale it. Hit enter. I'm going to specify a base point. Well, I want it to be the center point here. Now I can scale the circle to whatever size it needs to be. So I'll just make it a little bit smaller. Okay. Actually, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller still. So once again, scale, click on the object, enter, select a center point for that scaling. I want it to be the center point of the circle. I'm going to make a really tiny circle. Oh, hey. I'll have to zoom in to do that. There we go. Now, why did I make that super tiny? Well, because the next feature is array. There are two different types of array. There's three different types of array. They've added the path array. Polar array it's basically like if you're trying to create a clock, you would have 12 different polar array items for your numbers. Your numbers would be located around a circle at a certain distance. Rectangular array basically puts it into a rectangle where you have the same object that's copied over a number of times. Basically, it's the same thing as doing copy. For this one, it'll copy at a certain distance, vertically and horizontally. For this one, it will copy at a certain distance, and it will be around a center point rotated at a fixed angle. The array features, it's really helpful when you have to have multiple objects. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the rectangular array. First thing it's going to want to do is say, okay, which objects are going to be arrayed. I'll hit enter. I'll pick my circle and hit enter. Notice how it's tiny. The first object that it gives me is it just comes up with an array, and it says, hey, do you like this? If you like it, just hit enter. Well, I don't quite like it. I want to change it a little bit, make it a little different. So I am going to go in here, and you can change the count. The count does the total number of columns. So here, let's say I want 8 columns, and I want 8 rows. Enter. Okay, that's what the count does. You can also do columns and rows specifically. So let's say I want to have, well, here I specify I want 8 columns. And here's the distance between the columns. Well, I'm going to set that at 0.6. Hit enter. It spaces them out a little bit in this direction. And I can do the same thing with rows. Or I can just directly influence what the spacing is. So count, spacing, columns, and rows, they all kind of do the same thing, but they're different avenues to get in here. Base point will specify where do you want your array to be around? So if I pick somewhere around here, if I try to grab everything, it'll be about that point. Kind of a screwy way of grabbing the entire array. So I'm just going to put it right back into the center here. That'll be the center of my array. Not really sure what associative levels are. They're a little bit beyond this course, but that is the array function. I will hit enter to exit out of this and agree to it. And there we go. I now have all of my weird array that's built into there. So all of those are your modified tools. There are also some drawing tools that are very helpful when coming up with your drawings. Now, if you hand me in a drawing that looks something like this, I will be able to tell whether or not you followed along with every one of my instructions, because I know what all the commands are that it takes to get to each individual line that is shown up here. So follow my instructions. You're going to want to make sure that you have this object, which is skewed, and then mirrored. You're going to want to have a circle which has been scaled and then arrayed. Oh, one last thing. I want to show you a trim feature. So here I'm going to draw a line, and it's going to go through this circle. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. What we'll do here is we're going to trim, and we're going to trim this edge of the line off. We're going to trim this edge of the line off, and then we're going to trim this corner of the circle. So now we have a circle that has a line in, and then hit enter. Okay, so recap all the things I'm expecting you to do. Here you've got a rectangle. On the rectangle, you're going to fillet two sides and chamfer the other two sides. You're then going to offset that rectangle inside, outside, or inside, inside, outside, outside. I really don't care about what it is, but you'll have two offsets on that rectangle. Okay, you have to show me that you understand how to do it with polyline by having it show up like this. If you didn't do it as a polyline, it'll come and the lines will have to do intersections. You'd actually have to go in and do a bunch of trimming to try to make it look like this and this. It's a big waste of time, if you ask me. It's just easier to do as a polyline. You then have to come up with one line here, and then you will need to offset it twice again. Here you need to come up with your triangle up at the top. It has to be trimmed. The way that I design this is that it's directly over the center line. You will need to have this triangle shape up here. You're going to need to have these two circles, which were copies of our original circle. This circle is going to need to be trimmed with this straight line on the side, and then you will need to have an array of small circles right here. So those are all of the objects that I'm expecting you to have as part of this assignment. Okay, now last step, I'm going to go ahead and from template create a brand new drawing, navigate to my drawing file that I have downloaded, AutoCAD.dwt. I'm going to import ENG sheet. I'll go to it, and then I'll go to my layout tab up here and insert a rectangular layout. Now I didn't create a layout layer. I need to, but I didn't. So I'm going to select this real quick. No, I'm going to go home, layer properties, add a new layout layer. I will make this one yellow because that's how I do it, bright yellow. And then I will set it to not print. Select this layout outline, change it to the layout layer, hit escape. So now it won't print my actual layout line. Double click inside of here to go into model space. Then I click the grid function to turn off that background grid. I click on model to go back to paper space. And now I have my drawing back. Okay. Now to finish this out, you need to double click on the title block. And here this will be MLA 2. Class name doesn't change. Inches, yes. Here our scale is going to be not to scale. Initials, this is going to be your initials. Page numbers, and this is 1 of 1. Hit OK. And lastly, going to go ahead and plot this. Right click on the sheet, go to plot. I'm going to pick AutoCAD PDF. And yep. Make sure that everything is nice and go ahead and hit OK. I'll pick a place to save it. I'm going to save it with my other ones. And here we go. AutoCAD MLA 3. This is object, modification, and drawing tools. And then hit OK. That'll create my PDF. Should pop it up too when it's all done. And there it is. Okay. Notice that my lines are a little thin. It's kind of interesting. Sometimes AutoCAD does weird stuff. You zoom in on it, it looks fine, but in the PDF mode, it doesn't actually display properly. So all those line thicknesses are the same value. But on the PDF, it just doesn't display properly. PDFs struggle a little bit with AutoCAD. I've noticed that. If you were to print this out to an actual piece, it would look fine. But there we go. That is the drawing. So